Let's make some pita bread. Pita pumpkinita. So pita is one of those things that I just generally expect to not be very good pretty much anytime I get it at a restaurant in America, and sometimes I do get that really good pita and it's just like, and we're gonna make that pita. The kind of pita that'll make you just kind of question your life a little bit. I thought about making shawarma, falafel, or something and making like a whole pita sandwich out of it, but I just love pita so much that I just wanted to do a deep dive into pita. I believe that it deserves its own video, and this is the kind of video that I would want if I actually wanted to learn how to make pita. Does that make sense? I'm gonna prepare some dips at the very end, so make sure you stick around for that. And lastly, if you could please like, comment, subscribe, do all of those things. It actually makes a difference, and I work super hard on these videos. Without further ado, let's make some pita. So like most breads, pita really doesn't have that many ingredients. I'm gonna be using dry active yeast to leaven this. It's always important to look at the instructions and see what temperature your water is supposed to be, and then actually get your water to that temperature. Now we need to activate our yeast, which I'm just doing straight in the bowl. It's gonna end up in there anyway. We're gonna throw in the water, sugar, and yeast and give that a good stir. Let it sit for 5 to 10 minutes until it gets nice and foamy, which just tells us that the yeast is active and that it's gonna do its job. Not trying to like overstate the obvious, but if your yeast isn't active, your dough's never going to rise. Anyway, we're throwing olive oil, bread flour, and salt straight into the bowl, and then we're gonna give it a good mix. Of course, you can use your appliance of choice to mix this. I just feel like you learn a little bit more about working with dough and the nature of it if you mix it by hand, so we're just gonna work this into just kind of a shaggy mass till it comes together to let the flour start hydrating and let it sit for about 10 minutes. Once rested, we're gonna take a wet hand and just start mixing everything together. Feel free to do whatever you want to it just to make sure that there's no dry clumps in the dough, and then we're gonna turn it on onto our counter and start the knead. This dough is relatively sticky, so we're gonna have to do these slap and folds where we slap one side down and fold it over, turning 90 degrees between each one. For the sake of trying to teach something, I decided to try to knead it normally just to show you that it starts to kind of fall apart, and then to take it even further, I'm just gonna completely mess this dough up and just sprawl it out all over the counter. When the dough's in this stage, it's just never gonna come together from normal kneading, but if you just pick it up and start doing the slap and folds, you'll see really quickly that it comes back together into a pretty cohesive mass. So I'm just gonna do this for a little bit and strengthen up the gluten in the dough. It's not gonna get everything off the counter, so we'll need a bowl scraper to scrape everything up. Then we're gonna give it a couple more slap and folds and get it into a nice position to rest for another 10 minutes or so. Now that we've let it rest in this position, once you go back to the slap and folds, it should be super obvious how much nicer the dough is. It's looking nice and smooth on the outside and really holding its shape. It might be overkill, but honestly making any really good bread takes a lot of time, so I'm gonna let this rest one more time, do another series of slap and folds and those roly-poly actions to get it into a nice and neat ball. Then we're just gonna grab our bowl, hit it with a little bit of olive oil, mix that around with your hand. I also kind of like to hit the top of it, and if you see any bubbles like this, feel free to pop them. Dough goes into the bowl. We're gonna cover that with a damp towel or some saran wrap, whatever you like here, and then we're gonna let it rise for an hour to an hour and a half until it's nice and doubled. If the timing works better, you could also let it rise in the fridge overnight, but either way, we're gonna knock out all of this air, release the sides from the bowl, and then we're gonna get to shaping these. We're gonna breeze right through this part because I don't wanna be too boring with this very educational video, but I like to weigh the full mass of the dough so I can divide it into equal pieces. Probably should mention that this is a double batch of my recipe that's in the description down below, and I'm making 10 pitas at 130 grams a piece. You could probably get these as low as 100 grams, and I wouldn't go too much more than 130, but it's your life, so make these as big or small as you want. On to the actual shaping. We're gonna flatten these out completely and knock every bit of air out of it as you can. Once they're nice and airless and flat, you're gonna tuck in all of the sides and form it into a nice little ball. I don't follow really any protocol on how to do that. Now we're giving it the old roly-poly action, which I've slowed down here so you can see a little bit better what I'm doing with my hands. Basically, you're caging in the dough with your hand and kind of tucking in the sides as you roll it so it forms a nice taut ball. It takes a little bit of practice to get it down, but once you get it down, it makes perfect sense and you don't have to think about it. Now that those are balled up, we're actually gonna let them rise again. So I'm gonna take some parchment paper, throw it in a pan, and get that pan nice and floured so nothing actually sticks to the parchment paper. Right before I place them onto the pan, I actually give them one more roly-poly, get them nice and taut, and just plop them straight onto the pan. We're gonna cover that pan with another pan so nothing dries out. I also like to sometimes use this casserole dish because it has a lid for the same reason. Rinse and repeat with the rest of your dough balls, and then I'm actually gonna let these proof in the fridge. It just gives it a little bit more time to develop its flavor, and the cold dough is easier to work with later. I left mine in the fridge for about 3 hours. If you were to just let them rise on the counter, you could do it in about 30 minutes. And now rolling them is really pretty easy. You're just gonna take them off the pan,
and throw them on the counter. I like to flatten them out with my hands a little bit just to get the shaping pre-started, and I can start popping some of these bubbles that like to pop up. The key to the fluffiest pita is to roll them out not too thin. I'm literally putting no pressure down when I'm rolling these out. If you can see, my hands are just barely holding the rolling pin. We're just giving it a couple of rolls back and forth, the 90-degree turn, a couple more rolls. That's going to help us keep that perfect circular shape, and you're going to have to test out how thick or thin you like it for your own preferences, but this is how thick mine was, maybe 1/3 of an inch. We're going to throw a tiny bit of a curveball here, throw this on the pizza peel, and then I'm actually going to cook this in my awesome pizza oven. This is on its lowest setting and the oven's still at 650 degrees. Don't worry, I'm still going to cook one in my indoor oven, but I really love this. Just watch how beautifully this thing puffs right up into a nice little pillow. If you happen to have one of these ovens, make sure that you're rotating the pita periodically to give it a nice even color, and then in just like 90 seconds, this thing is beautiful and done. No matter what you cook them in, this is a really nice tip for keeping them warm and letting them relax and get that perfect texture. We're lining a pot with just a normal towel, gonna cover it with another towel and then the lid. So that first pita that I cooked, we're just taking it out to give it a nice little look. Honestly, for my taste, I could have taken this one a little bit further and darker, but it still looks really awesome. Throwing that in our towel-lined cloth, I'm just gonna cook another one off to see if I can get that color a little bit better. And yep, that'll do. I'm really happy with that. That's just a perfect looking pita if I've ever seen one. All right, let's talk about your normal oven. So whatever you're gonna be using, you're gonna wanna preheat in the oven as hot as it'll go. I'm just using my cast iron skillet. If you have a pizza stone, that'll work perfectly, and it'll probably be an easier transfer method to put it onto a piece of parchment paper as soon as you roll it out so that you don't have to stretch it when you pick it up, but that's going straight into your oven. Now we get to enjoy the satisfaction of watching this puff up like a balloon. Once it's fully inflated, I like to give it a flip so that both sides get some good color. Total cook time was about 3 minutes at 525. You're still gonna have a really beautiful pita. It's just not quite as colorful as in the hotter oven, but now you just get to have fun cooking the rest of them.
All right, little pitas. Let's take a closer look. Ooh, oh my goodness. Look at that. Look at that. So fluffy. All right, so a correct pita should have a pita pocket. Pita pocket, pick a pepper, boop, boop, boop. Look at that. Yep, and because we left these nice and a little bit thicker, it's got some serious fluff action going on. Can we see that over here? Oh, look at that, yes, yes. Oh my goodness, you're an animal. I'm gonna take a quick bite and then we're gonna just like prepare a couple of dips and that will be the end of the video. God damn. I'm not trying to like toot my own horn too hard, but this is so good. All right, let's make some dips. The hummus. Now say it with me. Hummus. Not hummus. 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 Didn't feel like making it. We can do that in another video. Just give it some big old swooshes. Hit it with some olive oil, a little smoked paprika, and some fresh chopped parsley. Aren't you beautiful? Now this is labneh, which is Lebanese yogurt. It's usually made from goat's milk, and it's usually a little bit thicker than like Greek yogurt. We'll hit this one with some olive oil also. And then this guy gets a za'atar. Okay, boom. Let's have some little tastes. A little bit of pita should be able to support quite a bit of dip. Don't skimp on it. Cheers. I'm gonna go take these pitas over to my buddy's house. I hope you liked the video. Please, I'm not trying to sound desperate, but like the video, leave a comment, subscribe if you haven't already. I really work hard on these videos and I'd love to get more exposure on them. The pita of your dreams, I hope you make it, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye.